On to section 7, chapter 1, multiplying and dividing real numbers. And basically, we're going to do a quick review of multiplication, some of the rules. And if we add 2 plus 2 plus 2, that is the same as taking 2 and multiplying it 3 times, because multiplication is like a shortcut for addition. Similarly, when we have 2 times a negative 2, this means that negative 2 is added 3 times, and you end up with a negative 6. So as we see it here, if we're multiplying numbers that are both positive, that gives us a positive. But if we multiply a number that one is positive and one is negative, we're going to end up with a negative. Now, if both numbers are negative, though, negative times a negative gives you a positive. And again, negative times a negative gives you a positive. So we come up with these rules. If it's the same signs, both positive or both negative, the answer is positive. If one is negative, one is positive, that is, unlike signs, the result is negative. So again, a strategy might be to figure out what will the sign of your product be. If you do that first, that kind of helps, I think. Here it's going to be a negative. Here it's going to be a negative. Here it's going to be a positive. So once you determine the sign, then you don't have to worry about the sign anymore. So this is going to be 32. This is going to be 14, and this is going to be 90. And we'll do the practice. So a negative 40, a positive 12. Now we don't write it when it's positive. And 6 times 9 is a negative 54. Okay, now whenever you find that in a string of factors you run across a 0, then the results are always going to be 0. So let's take a look at this. In example 2a, we see in a string of factors, one's a 0. So that's going to be a 0. Now here there's no 0, but there's 3 negative signs. So the rule is for odd number of negative signs, odd number, there's 3, the answer is going to be negative. So 2 times 3 is 6, times 4, negative 24. Again, you determine what your end sign will be. 2 negatives, that is an even number of negative signs, the answer will be positive. So 5 times 9, 45. Another phone call. All right, I think we're good. On 45 on this one, 2 negatives make it a positive. Now here, there's 2 negatives, so this is going to become a positive, 44. Now, in a sense, this is a negative 5 times a negative 2, so this becomes a positive 10. And again, you could have done this as a negative 10, and then the opposite of a negative 10 makes it a positive 10. So this one is 54. So you're going to need to know how to work the signs, and again, odd number of negative, it's a negative. Even number of negative signs, it's an even. It's a positive. All right, let's go on. All right, we can do this practice too. Doesn't take long. So odd number of negative signs. It's going to be negative 30. There's a 0 in this one, so that's just going to be a 0. Even number, that's 6 times 4, 24. This is even number. This becomes a positive 6. Now the opposite of this negative makes this a positive. That'll be a 20, so 26. And a summary of helpful hint. Now, when we multiply with decimals, the key is, and chances are you'll use your calculator, figure out the sign, and you know in your answer then there's going to be 3 decimal places. And if there's a 0 at the end, you can just round it off, as you see here is what they're doing. And it's going to be negative. This is going to be negative also. And you can cross cancel if you would. 2 goes into there once, 2 goes into there 5 times. So it's a negative 7/15 right there. And here negative times negative makes it a positive. 5 goes into there once, 5 goes into there 4 times, a positive 16. And there's some others. Now, very, very important item here that we'll review before we do the next example. We have here a negative 4 that's in parentheses raised to the second, and we have a negative 4 raised to the second. Now you might think these are the same, but they're not. Here your base is a negative 4 that you're going to square. So negative 4 times negative 4 gives you a positive 16. Now here, what is your base? Well, your base is only the 4. The negative is not included. So you square the 4, get 16, then you apply the negative sign. This is really critical. You don't want to make that error because you didn't know the rules, okay? All right, so here, when we are raising a power, or a base to a power that's odd, and it's a negative, that is going to be a negative 3 times, odd number, the end sign will be negative. So for this one, it becomes a negative 8. Now here, your base is a positive 2 raised to the third power, which is 8. Then you apply the negative. So in a sense, these two, the results coincidentally come out the same. Now here, this is a negative 2, a negative 3, I should say, squared. 2 negative signs, that's going to be a positive 9. Now here, your base is a positive 3, that's going to be a 9. Then we apply the negative sign, a negative 9. And they have it written out here, okay? And we'll do the practice too here. So a negative 6 is our base, so we're squaring it, even number. That'll be a positive 36. This is going to be a negative 36. We square the 6 and then apply the negative. Here we're raising a negative 4 to a third power. So 3 negative signs, that's odd number. It's going to be a negative 64. Now here, our base is just 4. Raise the 4 to the third power, that's 64. And now we apply the negative sign. So again, coincidentally, these come out the same, but not always. Here you see it's not that way. Okay, so here they're telling you the base is negative 3. Here the base is only 3. But then we apply the negative sign. Okay, we're going to again look at reciprocals. Just as every difference of two numbers can be written as that, so too every quotient of two numbers can be written as a product. So we can say 6 divided by 3. Well, this is going to be 6 over 3 is one way to do it. And in a sense, can you see that that is 6 times 1/3? So in a sense, this was over 1, and where this is not a fraction, that is involved there. So here it's easy, and remember 0 has no multiplicative inverse. What's the reciprocal of this? Well, it's over 1, so it'd be 1 over 22. This is going to be 16 over 3. Now remember, it's a negative 1 over 10, and this is a negative 13 over 9. We're just basically flipping this, and it's the same sign. So all of these, if we were to multiply them, become a 1. That's the definition that we said earlier for reciprocals. The product of reciprocals is 1. And here it's 3/8, 1/15, a negative 7/2, and a negative 1/5. So there's the summary of it. And we can use this when we divide. And remember, when it's set up like so, we can write that negative 18 over 3, and that's just going to be negative 6. And the same rules apply, by the way. If it's odd number of negative signs, there's just one, it's going to be negative. If there are 2 negative signs, this is going to be positive. And this is a negative 5. Okay. And you'll be practicing this. And again, they're reviewing the rules. Same signs, positive. Different signs, negative. So it might be useful to develop the strategy of first just figuring out the signs. Here this will be a plus. Here this will be a minus. This is going to be a minus. This is going to be a minus. So here this is just a plus 6, a negative 12. Now here we have to actually convert it 2/3 times 4 fifths. Take the reciprocal of that. We already know it's going to be negative, and we can't cancel out, so that's 8/15, and this is over 1. So a negative 3/2 times 1/9. We know it's going to equal a negative. So 3 goes into there 3 times, 3 goes into there once, and this becomes a negative 1/6. And there are our answers here. Now remember, 2 negative signs, it's going to be a positive. Now, by definition, when something is divided by 0, in our math system, it's not allowed. So we say the denominator of a fraction can never be a 0. But you can divide as long as your numerator is not a 0. If the, denominator is not a 0, if your numerator is a 0, then the product is always a 0. Okay? And here's the definition. And we'll just repeat that. So anytime you divide 0 by a number that's not a 0, the answer is 0. But anytime you divide a real number that's not a 0, then if you try to divide it by a 0, we say that is undefined. That is, it doesn't exist. Okay? And you'll be using that. And here it is right there. Okay, good. So, our examples. For this one, undefined. This one, regardless of the sign, it's 0. Here we have 0 in the numerator, so this will be 0. So here, this is 0, undefined, and this is undefined, because our denominator becomes a 0. We'll be using that later in the course and in your next math course as well. Now, another thing they like to mention, I think this is a good point here, where is the negative sign? Well, this 1 over a negative 7, or a negative 1 over a positive 7, or just a negative 1/7. These are all equivalent. This is the preferred way, though. Okay? So that is, you could put the negative sign any of these places. All right, let's do some evaluating of expressions as we move this up here. And we're following, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, order of operations. So over here for A, this is going to be a positive 36 plus 3. And this is going to be a positive down here. So this becomes a negative 5. So we have 39 over a negative 5. But we said the preferred place to put that negative sign is right by the division bar. Now for letter B, we're going to square this first. This gives us a positive 9 times 2 is 38 minus 20 over, this becomes a negative 1. So this is going to become a negative 2 over a negative 1, which just becomes a positive 2 right there. Okay, then there are some practice, and I'm sure you'll be doing plenty. Example 10. Okay, we're doing some substitution. So again, we're going to put, and normally put the x value in a parenthesis. That way it helps you to keep your signs straight. So here we have this, the x is a negative 2, the y is a negative 4, but this one then becomes a positive. So this is a negative 10 plus 4 will give you a negative 6. And then now we're going to square these. But remember that negative sign out there is very important. This becomes a positive 16, a negative, and then in parentheses, as you square that, you get a 16, ends up being a 0. And then here you replace the negative 2 there, the negative 4 there. This gives you a negative 6, divided by negative 8. Negative by a negative gives you a positive, and that checks out as well. Okay, well, lots of little steps, and hopefully you're keeping up with your practice, and then later your quiz bees. And what do we have here? A little statement. A professional golfer finished 7 strokes under par. That would be a negative 7 for each of 3 days of a tournament. What was her total score for the tournament? Well, I don't know if that's going to be the total, but she is doing negative 21, so 21 strokes under par. All right, that doesn't tell you what they played, so that's why they have quotes around the word total. It's used differently. I know when I played golf, I never kept score anyway. I think I did it once in my 10 years. My score was terrible, but I enjoyed walking around the course. All right, they're giving you some calculator work and vocabulary readiness, and again, plenty of examples. Okay, we're almost finished with chapter 1.